The Edmonton Oilers and Los Angeles Kings are meeting in the first round of the playoffs in a series that I can't say many people would have expected back at the beginning of the year. But I think this is one of the most interesting series of the first round because these are two teams that I'm not really sure what to expect from. We're going to take a look at them here and preview the upcoming series. Let's go. Hey everybody, it is series preview time for the 2-3 matchup in the Pacific Division, the Edmonton Oilers versus LA Kings. And Edmonton this year, after a really kind of rocky first half of the season, made a coaching change, went to Jay Woodcroft, and he really turned this team around. Brought them from near the bottom of the Pacific back up to second in the division, and the Oilers ended up having themselves a very good year overall, particularly their second half of the season. And the LA Kings are the team that nobody really expected to be here. LA is the big surprise of 2021-2022. Most people did not have them as a playoff team entering this season, but with Vegas having the down year that they did, it opened up the door, and the LA Kings were the team that was able to take advantage of it and get themselves into a playoff spot with a very, very strong year. So let's take a look at the series here between Edmonton and LA. Look at both of these teams, starting with the Edmonton Oilers, who went 49-27-6 on the year, 104 points, and they finished second in the Pacific Division. This was a team that back in January looked like they were kind of down and out of it, and then Jay Woodcroft came in and got the train back on the tracks for the Oilers, and they had a very strong last 3 months of the season. In the regular season, they did very well against the Los Angeles Kings as well, going 3-1-0 against LA in the regular season. So obviously that's not a guarantee that it will continue in the playoffs, but it is a confidence boost and bodes well for that, being an area that they've been able to perform well in against this team in the regular season. So they're hoping they can do that in the postseason as well. The Oilers are a very, very good offensive team. And of course, they've got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, two of the best players in all of the NHL. Of course, they're a good offensive team. They score 3.48 goals for per game, which is 8th best in the NHL. Defensively, they're a little more middle of the road. They're not great defensively. It's certainly not their strong suit. They give up 3.06 goals against per game, which is 18th in the NHL, so bottom half of the league there. But when you've got McDavid and Draisaitl firing on all cylinders, you can give up some goals and still find ways to win with those guys racking up points. As far as special teams go, it largely follows the pattern of their overall offense and defense. Their power play is very, very good. Third best in the NHL this year at 26%. Their penalty kill, not as good. More middle of the pack, bottom part of the league. 79.4% on the PK, 17th in the NHL. So, not bad on the penalty kill, middle of the league, but certainly not a strong suit like their defense overall. Edmonton, over the course of this season, it's been such an up and down year for the Oilers. They've had some stretches where they were absolutely brutal. They had other stretches where they looked like one of the best teams in the league. Overall, Jay Woodcroft, after the coaching change, really got the most that he could out of this team, and they ended up having a very, very solid year, bolstered by their last 3 months. Switching over to the other side of things, the Los Angeles Kings. They went 44-27-11 on the year this season. 99 points out in the Pacific. Third place in the division. And they went 1-2-1 versus Edmonton in the regular season. So certainly not their best matchup. But, we're still able to win a game, get another one to overtime. And when you look at the LA Kings, it's amazing that they've made the playoffs and that they had as great of a year as they did, because nothing statistically about this team really stands out. They scored 2.87 goals for per game, which is 20th in the NHL, bottom half of the league there. Not a high-scoring team whatsoever. They gave up 2.83 goals against per game, which is 10th best in the NHL. So they are strong defensively, and they got really good goaltending from Cal Peterson and Jonathan Quick this year. And overall, they were a top 10 team in keeping the puck out of their net. But their special teams in general was really bad on both sides of the puck. They had one of the worst power plays in the league, 16.1%, 27th in the NHL, and their penalty kill isn't any good either, 76.7% on the PK, 22nd in the NHL. So when you look at the LA Kings, nothing about this team jumps out statistically about any area where they're a dominant team. So how did the LA Kings get here? This is a team that just found ways to win. And they were really an incredibly intriguing team to watch all season, because they would go on stretches where they would have, 7, 8 wins in a row. They'd win 9 or 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. Like, they would have these really, really good stretches. And then they'd have some other stretches where they looked absolutely terrible, and they looked like a lot closer to the non-playoff team that most people thought they were going to be this year. And, it doesn't even out statistically to anything particularly great for the Kings, but they found ways to win. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to, winning enough games. And that in LA was able to win 44 of them. They were able to get to 99 points and get into the playoffs. So the LA Kings have just found ways to win this year. And again, this was a season that was kind of an overachievement for LA. They were not expected to be this good. They were obviously taking steps out of their rebuild, but if you go back and look at, what all the analysts and TV people and YouTubers and what everyone did for predictions at the beginning of the year, a large majority did not have LA making the playoffs. So they've been one of the biggest surprises this year. No doubt about it. And in the best way, I've very much enjoyed the Kings having such a good year this year, and it's good to see them back into the playoffs. So this is going to be a very, very interesting series overall, because I don't really know what to expect with either of these teams. On one hand, you have the Edmonton Oilers, who certainly have not had the best playoff history, particularly recently. Getting swept out in the first round last year in a series that they kind of expected to win. 2020 in the bubble, losing to Chicago, who was the last team in the West to get a play-in spot, ended up losing to them. They didn't even make the playoffs the year before. This team has had a lot of issues with the Oilers living up to expectations. And this year almost looked like another one of those years where they were going to really struggle until they made the coaching change. That might be the X factor come playoff time here. For the Kings, it's just, I don't know what to expect from them in the playoffs, because most people didn't expect them to be in the playoffs. So those teams kind of go one of two ways. Either they're just happy to be there, it's amazing that they got that far, but that's kind of the end of the road and that's as far as they can make it. Or those teams kind of catch lightning in the bottle and are like, hey, nobody thought we could be here. There's no pressure on us. Why don't we just run with it and see how far we can go? And sometimes those teams can make a bit of a run. All in all, these are two teams that it's going to be very interesting to see how they perform for obviously the various different reasons. And I'm going to be very intrigued to see how this series turns out. But I think a lot of the pressure here is on the Edmonton Oilers. The LA Kings have already had a successful season and have already been better than expected, just making the playoffs. There's really not a lot of pressure on them to win or go deep. Like, they're just happy to be here. It's surprising that they are here. Edmonton, they need to win. Like, they cannot afford to waste another year of prime McDavid and prime Draisaitl and keep doing what they've been doing with these early bow outs in the playoffs. There's a lot of pressure on the Oilers to win in the postseason, which they haven't really been able to do with McDavid and Draisaitl. That's cooking up a lot of pressure here for Edmonton, and they're going to have to find a way to live up to it. But I think that there's going to be a lot of issues with the Edmonton Oilers if they don't win this series. I think there's going to be some changes with the Edmonton Oilers if they don't win this series, because this is a team that they probably should beat. But LA is certainly going to give them a tough time, as LA's been doing against their opponents all year. I mean, this is a team that has just continually found ways to win, despite not really sticking out or jumping off the screen at any particular thing. They've just found ways to win. So this is going to be a very interesting series. I'm excited to see how it turns out. And I think Edmonton and LA are going to play a pretty tight one out here in the Pacific Division. But that's my preview for this series. Thank you guys so much for watching. And with that, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our merchandise store, membership, and donations are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.